We're so sorry, Uncle Albert. We're so sorry if we caused you any pain. This last chapter is chapter 30, 1993 to present, and into the 21st century. Look at 1988, and Reagan stepped aside after 2 terms. He finished his 2nd term, and of course under the Constitution he was only allowed 2. And by that time he was getting to be an older man. He became president when he was 69, so 75 years old, 77 when he left office. So George Herbert Walker Bush, I always call him Old Man Bush, so we don't get him confused with his son, would become president in 1988. He would beat the Massachusetts governor, Michael Dukakis, who had a pretty difficult campaign. He talked about how Bush went after him, and you can look up some of these commercials on television. One of them was, or on the internet, one of them's kind of funny, where he talks about how Dukakis wants to be tough on crime, and there was a criminal, a murderer and rapist, Willie Horton, who in Massachusetts, when Dukakis was governor, he had a program where they let out people for the weekend on furloughs if they promised to behave themselves. And I know that sounds pretty ridiculous, but while he was out on one, when Willie Horton was out of prison for the weekend, he raped somebody and killed him, and this Bush took off on that, and it worked to his advantage. And then there was a case where Dukakis was filmed in a tank wearing an oversized helmet so he could to make him look like he was going to be a great commander-in-chief, and of course everybody laughed at that video too. So it didn't work out for Michael Dukakis, and that was pretty much the end of his political career. Bush would only serve 1 term, though. He would go on to lose the election in '92 to Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton. Clinton would also win in '96. When you look at the Democratic Party back then, Clinton was more of a moderate compared to his recent times, his wife. Clinton was against same-sex marriage. He was for cutting taxes, things that we often associate the Republican Party with. So, of course, Clinton's kind of moved in a different direction as he's gotten older too, and I think some of his views are more like his wife's. But during his term, that wasn't necessarily the case. He got in a little bit of trouble, as we know. One was with the Whitewater Real Estate Investment Company, and a conspiracy that was going on during that, and then a sexual affair with Monica Lewinsky, one of the White House aides. And then he pressed her to lie under oath, and then he got in trouble for lying about telling her not to lie, or telling her to lie. So he went through a impeachment proceeding, and the Senate and House decided that they were going to vote to get him out of office. But unfortunately for, I guess, the American people, and good fortune for Clinton, they came up short on the votes. He finished his term and moved on out of the White House after 2 terms. In the middle of his first election cycle in '94, the midterm elections, the Republicans actually took over Congress, the House and the Senate, for the first time since 1952, and Newt Gingrich, the Speaker of the House, was instrumental in trying to get the country to move in that direction. NAFTA was passed during this time, which was the North American Free Trade Agreement, which basically allows trade between Canada, the United States, and Mexico without a big import tax. 2000, the election came around, and Bush's son, the former governor of Texas, George Bush, would run against Al Gore, a senator from Tennessee, former vice president under Bill Clinton, and Ralph Nader, who was a consumer advocate, ran as a Green Party candidate. And this was a very close election. It came down to one state for the electoral count, and that was Florida, and they had a recount, and Bush slipped by and won by a few votes, and then the Gore people took it to court, wanted a recount. They recounted, Bush won, and finally the Supreme Court said that's it. Bush is declared the winner, so he would then serve 2000 and then 2004 also. During this time, of course, Bush would run against Kerry in 2004 and defeat him. But during this time, we had, when we look at immigration, we've got a changing landscape in America as we go into the 21st century and beyond. The United States takes in twice as many immigrants as all the countries in the world combined. I find that pretty amazing. And many of the immigrants who come to the country seem to vote Democrat once they become citizens, which makes us wonder, is the Republican Party dead, like some people say? But yet in the 2016 election, Trump beat Clinton, so I guess it's not completely dead yet. One of the other issues that came up during this time was global warming, and how fossil fuels contribute to the fact the Earth is heating up. Controversial. Some people don't believe it's true. Some people believe we're just going through a cycle. If you go back to the 1960s, people were screaming about global cooling, and here we are 40 years later, and now it's global warming. But we look at the ice caps, and they seem to be melting quickly. Why is that? And are we contributing to that? Or is it just a natural cycle that's happening? Also, during Bush's term, one of his two terms, Iraq would invade Kuwait. Kuwait had been an ally of ours, mostly because of oil. We went in to help the Kuwaitis, and the war was short-lived. It lasted only 3 weeks. And then Saddam Hussein, the leader of Iraq, was gassing some of his fellow countrymen, the Kurds who lived in northern Iraq. And there was some talk that, of course, that he had some weapons of mass destruction, that Saddam wanted to unleash these weapons on the United States and our allies. We also, of course, had in 2001 on September 11th the 9/11 attack, attacks on the United States where 3,000 people died. There were 4 airplanes involved that were hijacked. 2 of them hit the World Trade Centers, the Twin Towers. 1 hit the Pentagon, and then 1 was taken over and crashed in a field in Pennsylvania. And it led to the Patriot Act, which gave expanded government powers for surveillance. Bush then came out with what was known as the Bush Doctrine, which allowed military strikes on countries that harbor terrorists. Eventually, of course, one of those guys is going to be Osama bin Laden, that we're going to go after, as we tried to make the connection that he was behind the 9/11 attacks, and eventually we're going to catch up to him, but not until President Obama was in office, and we found him, and he was taken out and killed in Pakistan. 2008, we had Obama ran for president and became the first African American president to win the White House, and then he won re-election in 2012, and then of course along come the election, which probably surprised many people, 2016, when Trump defeated Hillary Clinton. So that's where we are now. A couple things to ponder here. One is, is global warming a real thing? Is it something that you believe is happening? Is the Earth heating up? And if it's heating up, is it caused? Is it man-made? Are fossil fuels contributing to this? Second question to think about is Saddam Hussein poisoned the Kurds with gas, his own countrymen, a major human rights violation. Should we be, we often say we want to be isolationists, but can we turn our backs on things like that, or should we step in and get involved when people are done wrong and there's a human rights violation? Next, are we as a country, in your opinion, conservative or are we liberal? You look at some of the court cases legalizing marijuana in many states. You look at some of the same-sex marriage issues, for instance. These are all liberal thinking ideas. Are we heading in that direction as a country, or are we really a conservative country with different values than what the courts say? Also, do we feel safer at airports now that we got the TSA? Checking all of our bags and our shoes and our purses and our belongings and X-ray machines. Do we feel safer, or are we willing to give up freedoms in the name of security? I mean, how far do we go? Are we? It's always been you're innocent till proven guilty, I guess, and the second part of that is until you go to the airport. So are we willing to give up freedoms in the name of security? And finally, what do you think is our biggest concern, our biggest challenge, I guess, as we move farther into the 21st century? Think about that and see what you can come up with on it. Well, until next time, and that might be another class. See ya.